A two-bedroom bungalow with sea views for £95,000. That is not a pricing error from 1985. That is a real listing from a real seaside town in England right now. While everyone battles over flats in Brighton and cottages in Cornwall, there are coastal communities around Britain where your pension buys more than a parking space. Places with sandy beaches, working harbours, fish and chip shops that have been frying since your grandparents were young. And house prices that make estate agents in the southeast weep with disbelief. We spent weeks examining house prices, NHS access reports, transport links, and what residents actually say on community forums when estate agents are not listening. We found 7 forgotten seaside towns where the beaches are real, the communities are welcoming, and the prices have not yet caught up with the quality of life. Now, before we dive in, if you find this helpful, tap that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what is coming next. Let us start with number 7, Morecambe in Lancashire. Stand on the promenade here on a clear evening and watch the sun drop behind the Lake District fells across the bay. The water turns gold, then pink, then deep purple. This view costs nothing. It happens every single evening, and somehow most of Britain has forgotten this town exists. The Midland Hotel anchors the seafront. This Art Deco masterpiece was built in 1933 and recently restored to its original glory. White curves against the blue bay. Eric Morecambe stands in bronze nearby, forever mid-routine, bringing smiles to everyone who passes. The connection to the comedian is not accidental. He took his stage name from this town. Morecambe has around 35,000 residents, large enough for proper amenities. Supermarkets, independent shops, cafes and pubs line the streets behind the front. Lancaster sits just 4 miles away with its university hospital and main line railway station. You can reach Manchester or Leeds directly by train. The average house price here sits around £150,000. Art Deco flats on the seafront have sold for under £120,000. A 3-bedroom semi with bay views went recently for £165,000. Compare that to equivalent coastal properties in Devon or Dorset, and the difference becomes staggering. Here is what matters for the future. Eden Project North has been approved for Morecambe. This is not speculation. This is funded reality. The same people who transformed a clay pit in Cornwall into a global destination are coming here. Property investors have noticed. Individual buyers still have time. The honest consideration is the weather. Morecambe faces west and catches whatever the Irish Sea throws at it. Winters can be grey and wet. But for those who find drama in weather rather than misery, this is part of the appeal. Number 6. Newquay in Ceredigion, Wales. This is the town that inspired Dylan Thomas to write Under Milk Wood. He lived here in the 1940s, drinking in the pubs, watching the fishing boats, listening to the voices that became Laregub. The town has changed remarkably little since. Colourful Georgian buildings stack up the hillside from the harbour. Blue, pink, yellow, white. The boats bob in the water below. Seagulls wheel overhead. And in Cardigan Bay, just beyond the harbour wall, bottlenose dolphins surface and dive. This is not a tourist attraction you pay for. This is daily life. Residents watch dolphins from their kitchen windows while making morning tea. Newquay has around 1,500 permanent residents, small enough that faces become familiar within weeks. The Welsh language is alive here. Approximately half the population speaks Welsh as their first language. Signs are bilingual. The culture is distinct and welcoming to those who appreciate it. Property prices sit higher than some towns on our list. The average is around £230,000. But consider what that buys. A stone cottage in a harbour town with dolphin views. A 3-bedroom house with water glimpses sold recently for $215,000. In Cornwall, equivalent properties exceed $400,000 routinely. Prices reflect the location and views. Healthcare requires planning. Brongles Hospital in Aberystwyth is 20 miles away. GP services exist locally, but specialist care means travel. Public transport is limited. A car makes life significantly easier. The consideration is remoteness. New Quay suits those seeking genuine escape. If you need regular city access, other options serve better. Number 5. Skegness in Lincolnshire. The railway poster from 1908 declared Skegness is so bracing. That fisherman leaping on the beach became one of the most famous advertising images in British history. Over a century later, the poster still tells the truth. 6 miles of sandy beach stretch along the Lincolnshire coast. The pier extends into the North Sea. Amusement arcades flash and chime along the front. This is traditional British seaside without apology. Fish and chips wrapped in paper, donkey rides for grandchildren, the smell of candy floss and sea salt mixing in the air. Skegness has around 20,000 residents. This is a proper town with proper services. The population skews older than the national average, which means local amenities cater to retirees rather than ignoring them. Cafes open early, benches face the sea. The pace allows comfortable living. The average house price sits around £155,000. Bungalows popular with retirees regularly appear below £140,000. A 3-bedroom detached house sold recently for £170,000. The value here is remarkable for a genuine seaside resort. Boston Pilgrim Hospital is 20 miles away for major care. Local GP surgeries serve the town well. Bus services run along the coast connecting to Mablethorpe and other communities. The honest note is seasonality. Summer brings crowds and caravans. The town buzzes with families and day trippers. Some find this energizing. Others prefer the quiet months from October to April, when Skegness belongs to residents again. Number 4. Withensea in the East Riding of Yorkshire. A lighthouse stands in the middle of this town, not near the coast, not on a cliff. In the town centre, surrounded by houses and shops. The Kay Sowerby Lighthouse was built in 1894 and now operates as a museum. At night it glows against the sky. From certain streets it appears between rooftops like something from a dream. The beach stretches for miles in both directions, wide and sandy at low tide. The North Sea rolls in with that particular grey-green colour that East Coast residents know well. Fewer crowds than more famous beaches. More space to breathe. Withensea has around 6,000 residents. The town appears in deprivation statistics, and I want to address that directly. Yes, there has been underinvestment. Yes, some shops stand empty on the high street. But what numbers cannot capture is community. Residents describe neighbours who actually look out for each other. When someone needs help, help arrives. That matters more than a chain coffee shop. Average house prices sit around £125,000. A 3-bedroom semi recently sold for £118,000. One buyer noted their purchase cost what a garage goes for in Reading. This was not an exaggeration. Hull is 17 miles away with full hospital services. Bus services connect the towns in around an hour. Recent coastal defence investment has protected 2,000 homes, showing government commitment to this community's future. The consideration is weather. The East Yorkshire coast catches wind straight from Scandinavia. Winters require warm coats and acceptance. But for those who find bracing air invigorating rather than punishing, Withensea delivers honest seaside living at honest prices. Number 3. Saltcoats in North Ayrshire, Scotland. The Firth of Clyde spreads before this Victorian resort town. On clear days, and there are more than you might expect, The Isle of Arran rises from the water like...
The 1970s were an era of glitz, fame, and cultural change, but behind the charm and bright lights, some of Britain's biggest icons held deep contempt for the very people who made them stars. Today, we expose 10 famous figures who treated the public with shocking disdain. From humiliating fans to belittling staff, their arrogance left lasting scars. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and ask yourself, does talent excuse bad manners? Watch until the very end, where the final story reveals a national treasure who secretly loathed the working class. Let's uncover the darker truth behind the fame. 1. Peter Sellers. The 1970s were undeniably the decade of Peter Sellers. To the public, he was the bumbling, lovable Inspector Clouseau, a man who could make millions laugh with a single clumsy step. But behind the camera, the reality was far darker and deeply unpleasant for anyone unfortunate enough to work for him. By the mid-1970s, Sellers' ego had swollen to extraordinary proportions. He didn't merely demand excellence, he demanded submission. His mood could flip from charming to venomous in seconds, often triggered by the smallest inconvenience caused by drivers, assistants, or waiters. Sellers genuinely believed he existed on a higher plane than the working-class crew who supported his career. His wastefulness was staggering. He lived in a bubble where no did not exist, and anyone who dared to say it was erased from his life. By the end of the decade, despite massive success, Peter Sellers was profoundly alone. He had burned nearly every bridge behind him. He left a legacy of brilliant comedy and a long list of people who never forgot how small they made them feel. A genius, certainly, but one who lost his humanity on the climb to the top. 2. Kenneth Williams. While Britain roared with laughter at the Carry On films throughout the 1970s, the man at their center was quietly seething. Kenneth Williams, famous for his flaring nostrils and exaggerated delivery, viewed the public with fear, revulsion, and barely concealed contempt. He famously referred to fans as the Great Unwashed, and he meant it. To Williams, admirers weren't supporters, they were walking threats to his obsessive cleanliness. Dining out with him was a minefield. A waiter with dirty fingernails or a fan politely asking for an autograph could trigger visible disgust. He would recoil, his face twisting with genuine revulsion. His private diaries from the decade are filled with venom. He described ordinary people in cruel detail, their smells, teeth, and clothes. The irony was brutal. A man who became wealthy entertaining the working class could barely tolerate their presence. On set, Williams kept his distance from junior crew. While others joked with lighting techs or makeup artists, he longed for affection but despised the people offering it. He spent nights alone, filling diaries with complaints, never realizing his misery was self-inflicted. A national treasure who wished the nation would leave him alone. 3. Alec Guinness. Sir Alec Guinness entered the 1970s as a titan of British acting. Shakespeare, Dickens, prestige drama. Then came Star Wars. To Guinness, it was fairy tale rubbish. Though professional on set, his private letters dismissed the dialogue as excruciating and the genre as beneath him. He resented playing second fiddle to a Wookiee and a robot. Worse than the film was the audience. Guinness found young fans obsessive and embarrassing. When a boy once told him he'd seen Star Wars over 100 times, Guinness agreed to sign an autograph, only if the boy promised never to watch it again. The child burst into tears. Guinness believed he was teaching a lesson. Though he gladly accepted the fortune his 2% back-end deal provided, he despised the culture surrounding the film. He believed actors should remain distant and dignified. The screaming crowds of blockbuster cinema felt like the death of culture. He spent the rest of his life trying to escape the role that made him immortal. A man of refinement trapped in a world that loved him for the wrong reason. 4. John Cleese. By the 1970s, John Cleese was the undisputed king of British comedy. Monty Python, Fawlty Towers. On screen, he portrayed men enraged by stupidity. Off-screen, the line blurred. Cleese carried a fierce intellectual superiority complex. Anyone slow or inefficient tested his patience. Fans who asked stupid questions weren't ignored, they were dismantled with surgical wit. This wasn't banter, it was judgment. He gave laughter, the public owed him privacy. By the end of the decade, he withdrew from collaborative chaos toward tightly controlled projects. His brilliance endured, but warmth did not. He was comedy's strict headmaster, convinced the world would be better if everyone were smarter. 5. Princess Margaret. Princess Margaret embodied royal snobbery in the 1970s. While Britain faced strikes and shortages, she partied on mystique. She treated staff like furniture. Guests were forbidden to leave rooms before she did. People stood exhausted while she smoked, drank, and played piano into the early hours. She insulted celebrities, mocked appearances, and wielded the word common like a blade. Factory visits bored her. Crowds irritated her. She wanted privilege without responsibility. By the end of the decade, the public had turned. Yet she never softened. She demanded respect, but never learned how to earn it. 6. Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious spat into crowds, swung his bass at fans, and dove fists first into audiences. Fans weren't supporters, they were targets. Offstage, he was chaos, drugs, aggression, provocation. He wore shock symbols purely to offend, with no regard for history or pain. He mocked his own fans, calling them sheep. Idolization to him proved stupidity. By 1979, the myth collapsed. His violence and addiction left only tragedy. His story ended young, angry, and empty. He screamed no future and lived it. 7. Edward Heath. Edward Heath was intelligent, cultured, and utterly disconnected. Though born working class, he fled his roots. His manner alienated voters. During strikes and blackouts, he seemed baffled by public anger. He lectured instead of listened. After losing power, he retreated into bitterness. Alone, certain history would vindicate him. A man who wanted to lead a country he never seemed to like. 8. Rex Harrison. Rex Harrison treated fans and staff with open cruelty. Autograph seekers were screamed at, waitresses reduced to tears. He viewed audiences as cattle. He missed the era when stars were untouchable gods. Politeness to him was weakness. He died wealthy and widely disliked. 9. Arthur Lowe. Beloved Captain Mainwaring was far snobbier than his character. He isolated himself from castmates, treated junior staff coldly, and despised familiarity. He wanted dignity, not laughter. He never understood that the warmth he rejected was the greatest honor of all. 10. Cilla Black. Cilla Black built her image on being one of us, but by the late 1970s, the warmth faded. Off-camera, staff were ignored, fans were avoided. She wanted adoration without interaction. The girl from Liverpool became a fortress behind gates.